Hello and welcome to Random Robot. Today we'll be working on a LED taillight assembly for a 2014 Hyundai Sonata. So the tools we're going to need is a ratchet driver, a 10mm socket, a Phillips screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver for pushing, a rotary tool. I prefer the rotary bit. I think that worked quite well. A soldering iron and some electrical solder. Now this light we've been using in this vehicle had two burned out sections, the outer ring section, and on the far left there was this other lights that were not working as well, and all the LED section. Now, first thing we have to do after taking it out of the vehicle is to remove the gasket. So using some caution here not to tear it too badly. Oops, I just tore it there a little bit. And once we're going to pull that off, we're going to try to locate how we're going to get to the driver board or circuit board, because that's probably the issue for this. All the wiring looks good on this unit, so I'm assuming the issue is with the driver board or circuit board. So if you're looking here, you can see through that little vent. I know it's hard to see in the camera, but there's a circuit board right under there. So this unit needs to be cut out because there's no way to get this apart. Now I originally tried to cut it out with a disc cutter, but I found that this rotary bit worked much better. And if you notice, I'm taking slow, purposeful cuts, and I only have the speed set up to about halfway on the rotary bit. Any faster and spending too much time on the plastic will cause the plastic to melt and it will gum up on your blade quite easily. So take your time, slow, purposeful cuts until the whole section has been removed, exposing the board. Now this plastic gets everywhere, so make sure you're doing it in an area where you can clean up quite easily. I had to vacuum it up later. So now that I finally cut through the plastic housing there, and we've exposed where the motherboard is, there it is there. And we're going to remove it, and there will be 3 screws holding together. First one is here. It is a Phillips. And once we remove that, we'll go on to the next 2. Now, once the board is free, we've got to remove these little connectors, and they have a small little push clip assembly that you have to push down on to get it out, and they're kind of hard to get to in this one. So I'm going to try to use my screwdriver to push down on it while trying to push it out at the same time. Just be gentle. You do not want to scrape across the motherboard or damage these conductors. And it's kind of a tight fit. There's not a lot of slack in these electrical connections. So once the motherboard, the little board is free, we can have a quick look at it here. And you'll see that the one final connector to take off. And the connectors again have a little clip mechanism that you have to push down upon in order to release them. So don't forget to push that down before pulling them out, or else you'll damage the board. Now, looking at the board, we're going to inspect it for any possible damage. And on this driver board, there are several different driver sections. And there's a couple that I'm concerned about. So what we're going to do now is heat up our soldering iron, double check that it makes sure it's nice and hot. And what we're going to do is, I know there's a couple of these that get loose or have cracks in them, and they're hard to see, but if you take the moment to actually just heat up the existing solder on them. Sometimes that's all you need to do in order to seal those cracks. And the cracks are too small to seal, especially with this board where the back plate is covered in metal. You can't see it. So I suspect this little guy here. So I'm just going to apply some heat to him and see if I can melt that solder off on both sides of the unit. Now I know this little guy here is for the little side lights on the assembly, and I'm not sure which one of the other ones is for the band light that goes around, but I'm going to try to figure that out. So I'm just going through each one, just heating them up just a little bit to see if I can seal any possible cracks that I can't see. And I'm just going to try that first to see if I can solve the problem without having to do anything else. Now I noticed this big one here, I didn't have enough solder on it. I noticed it was a bit light, so I'm just going to add a little bit of solder. So heating up the unit first and being careful not to add too much solder. Just a little bit is all you need. You don't want big balls of solder there. It could cause you a lot of problems. So gently adding small amounts of electrical solder is all you need. So there's a couple other ones here I'm suspect of. So it's this one right here. I'm going to try to heat him up as well and see if I can seal those. There's this one, and there's one at the other end of the board that I am suspect of being possible problems. So I'll just heat those up. was a little light on the solder in this one, so I had to add a little touch more. Be careful not to add too much. You have to heat up both pieces of the base and the unit's connector at the same time. Now that we soldered up the board, we're going to bring it back to the car and we're going to test it out. So we're just going to plug it in. We're going to leave everything exposed. Turn the power on, see if we got everything working. Turn the lights on in the car. So I turn the lights back on the car, see if that's working. Ah, yes, look. So I got the little side lights and I got that rim light all working out. Good stuff, it worked. I saved over $500 just by spending a little bit of time with some solder to fix that all up. Now we're going to disconnect the unit and reassemble it on the bench. So the two ones that I suspect were the bad ones were this one here and that one there. The other ones I just touched on anyway, but those two I believe, since I was wiggling the board around when it was installed, were the culprits of the malfunction in the light. And these units are supposed to be non-repairable and they're exceptionally expensive. I was quoted the other day for $1,100 for one unit. I've seen them as low as $480, but they never seem to be in stock. So I decided to give it a try and see if I could fix it up myself. So right now I'm just putting the board back into its place. It's a little bit finicky trying to get the connectors in and everything all clipped up. But be gentle. Don't push it. Don't force it. Once you line up the holes, we're going to put the screws in. Remember, there's 3 screws, and the secret is don't tighten the screws down all the way when you first install. So once we have all 3 screws started, then we'll snug them up. Don't over torque these; you will break them. They're just plastic, and the motherboard won't. The main control board here won't like that very much. Now this connector I'm going to remove from the plastic device, and it was a bit of a pain in the bottom. It has a small clip on the inside that you have to push down on, and it was just being slightly difficult. Once that was off, you can see the clip here had to be pushed down, and it was just difficult to get my screwdriver in there. I'm going to reconnect it, and I'm just going to leave the hole on the back. It's not going to bother anything. That's on the inside of the vehicle. We're going to reapply the gasket, and once that's done, we're going to take it back to the car and do our last check and install it. So when reinstalling this, you have to remember there's a little clip here. This portion, the end portion of the bracket, has to slide into it, and it is a little finicky. But once it's in, it's not an issue. So before putting all the nuts back on, we're going to double check. We're going to test it. It's all working great. I know it's showing some flickering in the video, but that's just my camera. Both sides are up and running. And we're going to reinstall the 4 nuts to secure the unit, and we'll be done. Thank you for watching the video and watching Rambin' Robot does something random. Hope to see you next time with a new video. Thank you very much, guys.